And so, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm sure some of you are in a different time zone. Welcome to the best Friday, January 30th, 26 of your life. That's right. That's right. There will never be another amazing Friday, January 30th, 2026, quite like today. So, to that, we can all have a sip and toast to the best January 30th, 2026 of our lives. Go. We were discussing the other day land acknowledgements, and I'm trying to fine tune this idea, and this is what I've come up with. I've kind of modified things a little bit, and thank you for those of you sending your suggestions. I think it's great. We'd like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whoever was here and was savagely killing each other at the time, and they were not communists, by the way. Anyways, they aren't in charge anymore, and we're here until the Americans take over. And if the economists don't like it, they can leave. How's that? Is that better, or do you like what I did yesterday? I don't know. I like the simplicity of yesterday, but all art is a work in progress. Let me just adjust the Substack a little bit better. There we go. I want to have a little halo on the side. So good morning. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll give some time for people to join as we get into mine and hopefully your comments and ideas, because I think we do share a lot of parallels here. I think so. Right now, where I am, it's apparently going to be minus 25 degrees tomorrow or today or something like that. Today or something like that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And maybe the Americans can bring some of that global warming we keep hearing about, but never actually experience. That would be great. I don't know about you. Um, did any of you watch the memorial live stream for Scott Adams on Monday? And by the way, thank you everybody for your comments. I'll get to that as well. Greg Gutfeld was an amazing host and MC for the memorial for his very good friend Scott Adams. And anyways, still, so I think I encourage you all to go back and watch that. Thank you for everybody in the comments on Spotify. I'm still working through that platform. That's for people who don't want to watch and want to listen. We'll talk about that as well. And so I'm still working through that and trying to massage the process a little bit. I want to thank Trenton, the users Trenton and SB Roberts on Locals. Especially thank you for your financial contributions. And thank you for everybody on Substack who is a paid subscriber, an ongoing paid subscriber. I'm going to be focusing on all of you in the near future once I get a few more you into that group and doing some maybe a little bit extra special stuff for you guys. If you're on Discord right now, you'll see I am streaming for the first time on Discord. I don't know how to use it, but I figured, hey, why not? It's there, and we'll figure out how to incorporate that platform. And Raymond says, I just clicked on this and wow, my daughter-in-law's birthday. Well, happy birthday. And I hope your daughter-in-law has a very happy and healthy year of her life. I don't know how old she is, but I wish you all the best. And to her, lots of prosperity and success. And speaking of prosperity and success, what does the opposite look like? Well, you know what the opposite looks like? It looks like Don Lemon getting arrested under the KKK Act. I'm telling you, that Trump guy knows media. He knows how to get attention. We'll talk about that too. The last thing just before we start is the articles posted. I posted the article I wrote about China, which is in a bunch of publications. And they're all available at bjdichter.substack.com. Some of you are watching on Substack right now. You can get a copy of this at honkingforfreedom.com. the trucker convoy that gave us hope, honking for freedom. I encourage you all to check it out. And audiobook coming shortly. We're just about completed that part of the project. And you can also, as I mentioned, locals before, honkingforfreedom.locals.com, which we are, I hope, streaming here. If anybody is, whenever everybody's on there, just post a comment. I'm curious to see if when you put, like Beth, I know you sometimes, I don't know if you're here this morning, but you sometimes put up graphics. I'm not sure if the graphics come through on this encoder. So on locals, you cannot just, type something. You also can post a meme and stuff, and I just want to see if that works on this end. So we're going to start with some light news first. That is the 392 Jeep Wrangler is back. V8s are back, baby. And you're probably wondering, what's he on about? Well, so I'll give you a kind of a little bit of background as car people will understand this, but this is relevant to politics and everything that's going on in the world. So I don't know if I didn't know this until many years ago when I came across it. That so the V8 Wrangler, let's start there. The V8 Wrangler was introduced a few years ago. So basically a regular Jeep, they popped the 392 6.4 liter or 6.7 liter, 6.8 liter V8 into the Jeep Wrangler, and it was subsequently canceled very quickly amid another round of CAFE standard requirements from the U.S. government under the under the Biden administration. But so CAFE standards means corporate average fuel economy. Okay, so the entire fleet of cars that are produced have to hit a target of a certain level of efficiency and fuel economy. And that was, I believe, introduced by the Nixon administration under the APA, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But did you know the CAFE standards that were introduced in the 70s, they almost exclusively destroyed the U.S. auto sector? That's why the Japanese were able to come in and essentially take over all small car production, not just because they were more reliable, but they had experience for decades since the war of exclusively producing small vehicles, whereas the American companies needed to scramble in short order to start to learn this entire industry of automotive that Japanese perfected over decades. Did you know it was the government's fault? And that's really what led to the malaise era in automotive and the decline of the automotive sector. Like that's why the American car companies went from something like 80% of the market down to what is it now? 17, 20% of the market, something like that. It's because of the CAFE standards. Well, Trump has gotten rid of CAFE, apparently. So that's now out the window. And now V8s are coming back, baby. So those of you who are big fans who are car people, you're probably very rejoiced. Not in Canada, however. We're getting combustible Chinese EVs that can't be serviced and will burn you alive while you're inside of them. Particularly the Xiaomi SU7, the one that the Ford CEO said he loved it. It was the best car he ever driven and all that. I love this car. And it's better than, I think he was just looking for a job at one of the big China companies. And he was trying to kiss their ass. And maybe that just didn't pan out from him. But you'll see lots of comments online about Ford CEO glazing over the Xiaomi SU7. The Xiaomi SU7, one of the Chinese cars that's coming to Canada, that it doesn't have door releases. It's just button actuators. So you get into an accident and it severs the electrical contacts. And I guess it triggers. There's the main fuse that shuts off all power. Well, it shuts off all power. It shuts off power to the doors, and then you get burned alive inside. And that's what Carney's bringing to Canada. We'll talk more about that. But so V8s are back. So there's a little bit of optimistic, light news for car people. I hope you're all excited because I know I am. I was listening yesterday to trigonometry, as I'm sure some of you do. One of the I encourage you. I'll post the link of my episode of when I was on trigonometry. maybe a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago. They were discussing. They had Jeremy Boring, the former CEO, who I think is coming back. I'm not sure, but of the Daily Wire, and they batted around this idea, this question, like, what is a podcast? Like, we're doing a show, and they seem to struggle around what the framing of a podcast, because iPods no longer exist, but the word has taken on a definition of itself. So I think I can help. So for those of you who don't know, I do create and produce podcasts, and I've been doing so for some time. Not this particular live stream slash podcast, but Not on Record, Open College with Stephen Hicks. I've done a number of others before, um, and that are all part of a larger project. But the idea of a podcast is, and this maybe will help the Constantine and Francis, and I hope you're all well, brothers. I hope to see you sometime soon. I think what's different about a podcast that maybe I didn't see that idea in the conversation. A podcast is unique. It's not a show. It's not a radio show. It's something that was perfect for iPods and now mobile devices, which you can suggest are kind of an extension of the iPod. And the reason a podcast is different is because it's the first media, at least this is how I design my podcasts, and most people had for many, many years, is it works in video and audio format. It works in both. So you can watch a TV show, but try listening to a TV show without the visuals. It doesn't really work. A podcast does. It works in both forums. So that's why this live stream, you'll notice I'm not putting up visuals. And unless I may do stuff with audio in the future, I haven't decided. But the reason is because I want people who listen to it, who are in the office listening or in their truck or their car or whatever, that they're not going to lose anything from the experience of just listening to the presentation, comments, all that sort of stuff. So you can listen to this, by the way, this live stream slash podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere else you have podcasts, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so there's an answer to the question, what is a podcast? Raymond says, I heard you on Scott Adams School, and I need to listen to you. First off, I am Canadian. Second, you sound very informed. Well, thank you very much, Raymond. I appreciate it. And I was just about to get on to Scott Adams. And Raymond says, I was behind the convoy and could not believe how the government could stop a single mom from accessing her bank account to feed her children. Yeah, there was lots of that. I was one of the many people who had all of my accounts frozen, and it's everything. It's corporate accounts, credit cards. They did absolutely everything to us. So appreciate your support, Raymond, and thank you kindly. And I was just about to get on to that. So on Monday, I was on the Scott Adams podcast, and I think they're actually winding it down right now. They're usually trying not to cross over them too much because I can't start so late in the morning, but I also don't want to be competing with my friends, sort of thing. Hey y'all, hey Ben Rocky, hey Jess, it's good to see you there. So I was on Scott Adams podcast on Monday, also known as the Scott Adams School, which is in transition with Erica, Marcella, Sergio, Owen, and Shelley, of course. And big thanks to all of them. They're wonderful people. We talked a lot about a lot of things. Scott, obviously, and his influence over many of us, myself included. We talked a bit about geopolitics, and we did touch on El Salvador. And it was very interesting because Marcella, one of the hosts, is Salvadorian herself. And I don't know, my fascination and all the time I've spent living in and traveling to South America, I guess it's paid off over time. And then I get a better understanding of how things work in Latin America and the differences between Canada, US, and Latin America. And there are some stark differences and some similarities. But anyways, I touched on Nayib Bukele, who I describe as the blind spot of conservatives. who I wrote an article about it in my Substack quite a while ago. He used to be part of FMLN, the Communist Party, and for 10 years he said, "Soy de izquierda radical. I am a radical leftist," and that was kind of where he came from. And then Tucker Carlson just shows up and says, "Oh, this guy's a Christian conservative. What are you talking about?" And so I mentioned that the Emir of Qatar had been in El Salvador 8 times in 2024. And, to my relief, Marcella interrupted me and she said, thank God there's somebody who understands really the truth of what's going on in El Salvador. It was really nice because there are lots of Salvadorians who cannot go back home, or they would be arrested. So they're hiding out now in the United States, Western countries. So I did this documentary. Well, I didn't do it. Callan did a documentary of El Salvador. I just went down there, connected him with some people, and he didn't speak Spanish, so I went there to help him and do some translating. And it's on a YouTube channel called Britannica, The Bitcoin Dictatorship. It's excellent. It's an hour and a half. I think he has another piece coming out soon about Syria. Yes, he was just in Syria last month, believe it or not. Crazy stuff that I'm sure he's seen, and some of it I know for sure he has. But we went together to El Salvador. He did this documentary, The Bitcoin Dictatorship. It's on YouTube on a channel called Britannica. And what we explore, most of it is the story of El Salvador in English, what you are all hearing. And then he gets into what the story is in Spanish. And Marcela, being Salvadorian, again, was very relieved to hear that there are people who understand. The story in Spanish is very different than what we're being sold in English. So I love the Trump administration. I love the Trump team. They're lying through their teeth on El Salvador, probably because they have bigger fish to fry. Like, I get it. And, I think their framing is, look at what the country used to be. At least you can walk in the streets. And I get that. But allowing the Muslim Brotherhood to set up in the Western Hemisphere, not a good idea, in my opinion. So I think there's a rational calculus behind it, but I think it's going to bite them in the rear, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully not. As me and Marcella agreed, let's see if he runs again, and that will tell you everything you need to know. But anyways, the many things we discussed on sorry, there's comments coming up. I appreciate it. I'll get to them after. I am seeing them, by the way. We discussed the sabotage of grassroots movements, something that I have lots of experience with, not just the trucker convoy, but before the trucker convoy too. And I think I explained. Did I explain in that or some other interviews? I got into politics just as a kind of small business owner that was getting annoyed with all the communism around me. I was just starting to get really obnoxious on the university campus. So I decided, you know what, let's get involved in local politics and see if we can help make a difference. Boy, was that naive. But I learned a lot about how politics works, the same way Elon Musk learned a lot about how politics truly works. Scott Adams would talk about the gears of the machine, and he used to say that means Scott we would privately DM about that a little bit. And Scott really, I think he understood a lot more than he led on to believe in his live stream. But Raymond, you're becoming my Scott replacement. Well, I could never and do not want to replace Scott. I wish he was here. I really do. But I've been doing it for a while, and I'm restructuring my life that I can be here more frequently. So thank you. That is so kind of you. That really is so kind of you. So anyways, on the topic of sabotage of grassroots movements, there is a template that is used. Now, I'm sure this is going to be a point of disagreement on some people. I know there's a number of, conservative party people who follow me on Substack on some of the platforms, and I do have some, strong support from people within the parties. They get it, they understand what the problem is, and they are frustrated too. So they try to work the back channels to prevent things from going off the rails. So we got to acknowledge there's a lot. And by the way, there are people like that in, you're not going to like this, but there are people like that in the liberal minded parties as well, that you may not agree with them on a lot of things, but they're not completely irrational and they see the craziness around them. And many of them are just trying to figure out how they can weaken them. It also happens in law enforcement and policing, which we're going to get to in a little bit. Some of you don't know, my brother's police sergeant, and I have lots of friends who are cops. And, I did a podcast with an intel analyst for many years and have met many other analysts since then on the file that I'm very well familiar with. And so I have a less than superficial understanding of how things work behind the scenes. But anyways, so this point of disagreement, it's not intelligence agencies, and we're going to discuss intelligence agencies tomorrow in detail. I just couldn't fit everything here today, but I got to kind of map it out here first, and we'll go into greater detail tomorrow. But a big part of what you see, like I hear people always, oh, it's the CIA and this and that. Uh, I mean, we'll get into that more tomorrow, but the blind spot always seems to be the political parties. That how much of the sabotage that goes on actually comes from within political parties, not intelligence agencies. There are activists and volunteers within the political structure who do this. Like, why do you think an election in the United States, for example, on the Democrat side, what did it cost Kamala Harris? $2 billion or something? What do you think that $2 billion is for? What do you think it's going? Do you think it's going to CNN? No, it's not going to CNN or MSNBC. Yeah, some of it obviously is for advertising, but that's not what it's for. It's for PR, of course, so they can pay pundits to just regurgitate what they want said. Subversion through media articles, and now fake influencers they've discovered online, that they can find people at 10 cents on the dollar and give them some money and they'll say anything they want, right? And they'll change on a dime if the money's good enough. That's the strategy. The strategy used to be simple. And I have it laid out into 7 points. You can make it more or whatever, but this is just a general guideline. This is the strategy how it always was. So you're a political group, a political party, or maybe like the local district of a political party. You identify a grassroots movement that is in your realm, but maybe not completely on side. Maybe they don't like some of your policies. Take, I don't know, COVID or lockdowns or something like that, right? So they send somebody from the political establishment to help. Let's get involved. Let's help them. And the head of the local organization will call some volunteers that might be the right person to say, we have this group starting. We got to help them. Okay. So that's step 2. Send in somebody to help. Step 3, that person who goes in to help, either them or they bring someone else to become an administrator. This is the tactic of political entryism, by the way, that the Muslim Brotherhood uses on university campuses in academia. So they'll send in somebody to become an administrator of this new group that's forming. And they'll get a little bit of media and use them, that person who joins, either the original volunteer or the person they bring, who now becomes an administrator. They will now be identified as the leader or one of the leaders of the movement. So now the political establishment has their own person who this is where you get the word controlled opposition, who is identified as the leader of the movement. And they will build the movement. They'll build it up and they'll try to get it momentum and they'll do barbecues and all sorts of stuff. And they'll build the movement up to the point when the legacy media all of a sudden gets interested. An example of the legacy media all of a sudden getting interested is with that Twitter account. What's her name? Amelia? Is it Amelia? The purple hair girl in England, in the UK, which is great. So the media has now gotten interested in Amelia. So when the political establishment and the media gets interested in this new grassroots movement, they will start showing up to events to ask questions or whatever. That's when the grenade is dropped. Right when it's going to be on the evening news, the 6 o'clock news, or whatever for the first time, someone will show up who is paid to do this, or sometimes that person who's leading it, and they will say something positive about the mid-century Germans. How wonderful the mid-century Germans were, and they are misunderstood. And the reason is for step number 7, where the silent majority is at home cooking dinner, cutting their vegetables, the news is on in the background, and then they hear white supremacist, Hitler guy is now supporting whatever this movement is, right? Anti-lockdown, anti-this, anti-com, they're all whatever. So the average person only sees a little clip of this passively and says, "Oh, I don't know who those freedom people are. They're crazy. Yeah, they gotta get rid of them." That's the strategy. Now do you understand why Tucker Carlson keeps talking about the mid-century Germans? Yeah, that is an attack on Trump for the midterms. That's what that is. I know that's going to upset some people, but this is not new. This is a regular template that's used over and over again. That's how they co-opted the political establishment. That's the Tea Party and political establishment. It's politicians and lobbyists and fixers and donors, that whole apparatus. The Tea Party movement, the pro-life movements, the Freedom Convoy, they're doing it to the independence movements in Western Canada right now. It's the same people sabotaging it. That's how this all works. And it's amazing. Do you think that's the CIA or CSIS? And there's a reason. I hear that often that, oh, it's the CIA, it's the intelligence agencies. Sometimes they will be recruited through political channels, but that's not who starts it. And there's a reason. Because the intelligence apparatus, much like law enforcement, they have we'll take the CIA as an example, or CSIS if you want, if you're Canadian. They require predicate. They don't have predicate for that purpose. And if somebody in law enforcement acts without predicate, meaning probable cause to conduct an investigation and just even start screening people, because that always gets approved by higher ups, and they have to show predicate. If they don't show predicate, well, that's what internal affairs is for. That's why they get audited. It's a whole system. It's a bureaucracy. So they don't go out on their own and do things. That's just not how it works. Now, obviously, there's always rogue elements sometimes. There's people, blah, blah, blah. But there's always corner cases and exceptions. There's no question. But do you know why it's always pointing blame at, ambiguous 3-letter organization? Because it's the political parties and the political donors and the lobbyists. That's who's doing it. And they don't require predicate. They can operate completely on your own. Now, I'm going to say a name now that I think should persuade you to seeing this framing of the world, okay? That it's not rogue in 3-letter agencies operating on their own because they require predicate. It's political parties and the political fixers who don't require predicate and can do whatever they want. George Soros. Huh? Huh? Now you see it? You can feel that, can't you? That's George Soros. And not just George Soros. He's one of the guys on the left. But this happens on the right as well, just as much. Who do you think killed the Tea Party movement? Who do you think killed the trucker convoy? Who do you think co-ops all these pro-freedom? Sorry, the pro-life movements? Jim Helios has talked about this a lot in Canada. That's how this operates. So I know Scott understood a lot of this, and there's definitely bias regarding the CIA because of things they've been involved in. But my argument always was it doesn't start there because they require predicate. Yeah, Raymond says they're being hypnotized without knowing it. Raymond's great. Raymond and Jesse, you two are amazing. You're wonderful, and everybody else. Okay. Uh, just want to acknowledge a Twitter post from an account, very short. The idea of nice. The Twitter account is Dr. Hypnosis. And if you were a fan of Scott Adams, you probably know this account. He has a book called It Feels Like Cheating. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. Interesting book. Very good. You should check it out. He posted online. I responded. He posted this regarding all the ICE protests and these people that have been killed, and he says, "Told ya, start calling them nice." And I responded, "That would work." And he's correct. That would work. Now, here's the idea. Here's the concept. Um, the idea I think he's referring to is how the subconscious processes words. The word nice has positive connotations. And the problem on our side, and when I say our side, I mean the non-collectivist side, the individualist side, which I think is a hodgepodge of some libertarians, some conservatives, some liberals, even the individualist type people. We always surrender words with positive connotation to the enemies of the West, to the communists, to the people who are subverting the West, these foreign actors. And we allow them to steal words like progressive. Progressive is a word with positive connotations. That's why it's so easy to hypnotize younger people and get them to buy in because the idea of the word is a positive word. It's very difficult. How do you frame progressive as negative? That's a challenge. It needs a political definition which gets really convoluted and the subconscious can't really process that, right? So I think, and I'm sure Dr. Hypnosis would agree with me, that Trump should rename ICE to the National Immigration and Citizenship Enforcement. Nice. This would have the impact only hypnotists would understand, right? Let's let them see nicer Nazis. I want to see them saying that. It would be such an epic win for the first time in terms of taking back words that have positive connotation. Uh, Raymond, you're my spokesman. Raymond, you're awesome. Um, Jess, you are not a pain in the butt at all. If people are commenting in the chat, and feel free to. Jess, I love you. I don't know if you're Jesse. If you're in the Discord, tell me if you can see the stream in Discord as well, because I can't. I can only do so many things at once, as I'm still learning this duct taped and band-aided production, which is what I'm hoping this to be. To be entirely honest, so I want to get into this. Why have things been so cold in the Northeast? So in Toronto, apparently it's going to be minus 25 degrees. And we're going and put a pin in that. It's going to be minus 25 degrees. I came across this idea on the internet last night, and it suggests that the CME from January 10th might be related. Okay. Now, some of you are going to have a heart attack. Don't have a heart attack yet. Just hear me out. So the CME Corona mass ejection is what that is. That's a massive solar flare of plasma from the sun that is ejected and is coming our way. Some people refer to it as space weather. So I went to AI and I asked a question of Grok, Perplexity, and Gemini. I said, is there, because I saw this thesis online, so I wanted to, you know, can we debunk this? I don't know. Is it true? Is it not true? Is there legitimate speculation that on January 10th, the CME might be correlated to the current frigid temperatures in the northeast of the United States and parts of Canada? This seems to be a scientific hypothesis that a combination of a weakened cyclical change in the magnetic field and bombardment of the ionosphere with solar radiation may contribute to the cold we are experiencing. So that's the question I posed to these three AIs. Okay, the first one was Grok. Grok said, there's no substantial evidence or widespread discussion supporting a direct correlation. CMEs primarily cause space weather effects like geomagnetic storms, auroras, satellite disruptions, potential power grid issues, but their energy is largely deflected by the Earth's magnetic field, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So Grok says no. Perplexity says there is active research on how solar activity and space weather can influence the polar atmosphere, but a direct specific link between the January 10th CME and the current Northeast cold outbreak is not supported by mainstream science at this point. The cold pattern over the U.S. is very well explained by disruption, polar vortex, and associated large-scale atmospheric dynamics. Okay, fine. So Perplexity says no. So Grok says no. Perplexity says no, probably not. Gemini then says, which, by the way, for research, I don't like Google. Gemini is the best. It really is quite good, which concerns me. But anyways, Gemini says, well, there's no specific consensus that the January 10th CME is the direct cause of the current frigid temperatures in the Northeast. There is indeed legitimate scientific speculation and ongoing research how solar activity modulates Earth's winter weather patterns. And it goes on to say the hypothesis I'm referring to is complex chain reaction between the sun and the upper atmosphere and the jet stream. It goes on to discuss the ozone layer, vortex disruptions, CME bombardment. And the conclusion says, basically, I mean, the conclusion that I've come to after reading all of this. So Gemini says, well, maybe there's research. Could be. Grok says no. Perplexity says maybe. So what's my conclusion? I don't know. Sure looks like science isn't sure either, that more research is required. And I'm okay with, I don't know. And my question is, why can't we all do that? Instead of absorbing the first thing we hear, which is what I know many people would have done if they would have seen the very persuasive short little video that I saw last night, they would have said, that's why it's cold. That's why it feels cold. Instead of, okay, that's an interesting idea. Let me go. You know, when I used to be a diamond grader and a gemologist, in order to verify something is a diamond, you would need to have 3 tests, right? Is it single refractive? What's its specific density? What's its refractive index? Like, there's a whole bunch of tests that we do, spectrometer, whatever. You'd have to do at least 3 tests to verify if it was, in fact, actually diamond. Well, why don't we do the same thing when we see these assertions come out of nowhere? And I think the reason is, and, you know, any Dr. Hypnosis or any hypnotist would understand, because this is how we're wired. New information that no one else has heard, it has a sort of prestige, right? It's, I know something. I just came across something nobody else knows. It's like the first time you saw a Lamborghini Countach in your neighborhood. You get really excited because nobody else has seen it. I had growing up, there was a guy in my neighborhood who had a black Lamborghini Countach 5000S. And I remember riding by my bicycle when I was, I don't know, 11 years old maybe, and seeing a garage open and a Countach. I'm like, oh my God, I've never been so excited in my life when Lamborghinis were very rare. But the point is, this simple task for testing with 3 AI sources, I believe, protected me against potential brainwashing. In this case, climate brainwashing. And, in honor of Scott Adams, this conclusion of we don't know, it's possible, maybe, maybe not, that CMEs have an effect on the ionosphere, as does the changes in the magnetic field. Scott would say, did they factor this into their climate models? I don't think I ever heard Al Gore talking about that in their climate models, right? So, anyways, I think what this shows is the world is very, very complex. And in a complex world, magic answers seldom give you the solution. And to be it's okay to be in that frame of I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing, I don't believe for a second they can measure the temperature of the earth in 100 years. They can't even forecast the temperature in my city today. I started by saying it was supposed to be minus 25. Turns out now it's only minus 14. What happened to minus 25? But they can measure within half of a degree globally 300 years from now? That's just fake. That's just not real. That is political maneuvering and biasing you into a certain way for business interests. And we'll talk about those business interests at some point because I happen to know where they are, and they're actually in the legal system that people often don't talk about, right? And by the way, I am not pro pollution, just so everybody knows. I'm not crazy. I've spent enough time, as sure many of you have, that I've spent enough time in the third world to see the effects of excessive and unregulated diesel emissions in very busy and condensed cities. Trying to walk to school and you can barely breathe. I've had that experience, so I get it. I'm not pro pollution. But 20 years after Al Gore, however many, I think more than 20 years now, isn't it? We have to get Al Gore to admit that every single prediction he made in his little documentary is wrong, or he's just a charlatan. It's just one of the others. Autism Capital. I said because some people were complaining about that. Autism Capital posted something on Twitter, and it says ex-head of product Nikita Bear shares that the Chinese government floods X search results with porn every time there's political unrest to prevent their citizens from finding out real-time information. Did you know that? Because lots of people in China use X via a VPN. You must have known that. I'm sure you must have seen that if you're on X. It's definitely mitigated now. Have you ever been in a political space on X, one of the Twitter spaces, when it gets spammed with porn in the nest on the top? It's happened in Bitcoin spaces. It's happened in pro-American spaces, national security spaces, talking about the Allen snack bars. It happens as well. Not only drones. It's not only done by Chinese nationalists, but also Pakistani ISI, Iranian Hezbollah ops. They all do this, right? We're going to talk more about Intel organizations tomorrow, as I discussed, but you get the idea, right? Trump is in the news. Hey, Phil Mission, what's up, brother? We're going to talk more about Iran tomorrow, and if you have any information, please send it to me. I'm glad you guys are you're all getting along. I love this. This is what I was hoping, that everybody would find each other, right? Trump is in the news, and boy, does that guy know they get attention. As Scott used to say, Trump is so good at being interesting. He really is. Doesn't mean you agree or disagree, but just being interested. Interesting. He posted this on Truth last night. Okay. Based on the fact that Canada has wrongfully, illegally, and steadfastly refused to certify the Gulfstream 500, 600, 700, and 800 jets, one of the greatest, most technologically advanced airplanes ever made, we have hereby we are hereby decertifying their Bombardier Global Express and all aircraft made in Canada until such time as Gulfstream, a great American company, is fully certified. And it should have been many years ago. Further, Canada is effectively prohibiting the sale of Gulfstream products in Canada through this very same certification process. If for any reason the situation is not immediately corrected, I am going to charge Canada a 50% tariff on any and all aircraft sold into the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That's Donald Trump. Out of nowhere, boom, right? Where'd that come from? Um, it's amazing. I thought to myself, like, why are we such a-holes? I mean our government. I don't mean Canadians. I mean the Canadian government, right? And we all know the type of people who go into government here. We have the worst, most incompetent people in the country. Are the people who are glued to politics and get addicted to it and can never leave, right? Not everybody, of course, right? But there are some bad, even the good people in politics will acknowledge this, right? Well, apparently, this is part of a protection racket for Bombardier in Quebec. So, those of you who don't know, Bombardier is a major aircraft manufacturer. They also make jet skis and a variety of different boats and watercraft and stuff. And it does seem that Transport Canada, on behalf of Bombardier, has dragged its feet, has slow walked the certification of Gulfstream for years. And it just goes to show, I don't know, is Canada just one massive, incompetent Dilbert cartoon? And we'll have more on that in a bit, but I think that's what it is. And for those of you who uh, don't know Dilbert Reborn, you can go to scottadams.locals.com. Shelly, Erica, and the rest of the team, they're all running that, and they could use their help. But yeah, I thought this was just funny. Out of nowhere, boom, Trump takes a dig at Canada. Wow, we're going lots of things I tried to cram in today. All right, I touched a bit on Chinese cars. Risa asked me to talk about it. We're going to talk a little bit more. Have how Mark Carney's company Clarios, or owns to Brookfield. Mark Carney's the cutout, or Brookfield's the cutout for Mark Carney. But do you all know what a cutout is? Well, maybe we'll talk about that another time. But it's integral to organized crime, jihadi organizations, and the Chinese Communist Party. But anyways, his company is a major benefactor of these Chinese cars because Clarios, owned by Mark Carney's company, produces batteries. And I went through all the companies in a previous stream, all the companies that Mark Carney's battery company manufactures in China for these Chinese cars that are coming to Canada. Can the next party that comes into power finally prosecute people in Canada, finally prosecute some politicians, like once, just once? Or are we just going to be a banana republic forever without the bananas? Frozen banana republic is the best way to describe us. Although not minus 25, minus 14 only. BJ, what's your take on the Canada-US relationship? Remind me in the end, and I'll touch on that, right? Anyways, I think is that why Canada's falling apart? Because the Conservatives always refuse to fight back. They get elected and like, oh, okay, just ignore it. Oh, it's okay, bro. It's okay. Like, it's so frustrating. It's so infuriating that's so weak. But anyways, so what came up this week is the Israeli Defense Ministry. Is that a painted word for some people? Israel? I hope that's not a painted word. If you get angry at the word Israel, that is a painted word. That is your subconscious has been programmed to get angry. It's just a country like any else. Okay. Anyways, nobody would argue whether you like Israel or not that they aren't skilled in intelligence, whether you like them or not. And the country of Israel has banned Chinese cars because of cybersecurity concerns, particularly BYD. BYD is a massive Chinese manufacturer. Do you know what it means? Means build your dreams. It doesn't mean build your communism. But anyways, yeah, BYD. They've been copying cars from around the world for years. Anyways, that's a whole IP, intellectual property thing that Kevin O'Leary talks about correctly. So communication systems used in those cars can be used to spy on users and the surrounding areas. Very interesting. And to further this, Palmer Luckey has talked about having products manufactured in China. And part of the problem is they randomly install chips that are used for surveillance, but they won't put it in every product, right? So you go to manufacture something in China. And I mean, I remember when I was involved in trying to help people do some stuff many years ago. Depending on what the product is, you may have a minimum order requirement of 10,000 or 50 or 100,000 units of something. So let's assume you go buy 100,000 units of whatever Androl is buying, right? Maybe it's an actuator of some sort. Well, of those 100,000 units, 10,000 will have a surveillance chip in it, but the rest of them don't. So you'd have to go through QC on your own every single one, or you'd have to disassemble the product you just bought to check. That's how insidious that's how desperate the Communist Party of China is. They're just desperate, right? Because it's imploding from the inside. So how could anyone in Canada or North America consider one of these Chinese cars? And add to the fact that in cars like the SU7, there's no additional override for the door release. There's no mechanical release in addition to the button. So you get burned alive on the inside, when you get in a car accident. And, one thing that was brought up, and this is a shout out to Winston and Sea Milk on their YouTube channel, Serpensa. They did an episode on this. The two of them are great. They used to live in China, so they know China very, very well. But one thing they brought up, notice all the car YouTubers and auto journalists never talk about the reliability of Chinese cars. They always bang on about how unreliable American cars are, which is not so true anymore. But they're always bashing American cars for being unreliable. But they never once, ever mention how catastrophically unreliable Chinese cars are, that they fall apart while you're driving them within a year. So, anyways, I just thought that was interesting. So that's for Risa, who was asking for a little bit more detail on Chinese cars. And I think the Israeli position is a practical one and is probably something that should be emulated here as well. I think I'm going to move the next topic into tomorrow. And let me just get into the last thing, and then we'll move on to closing. So, Raymond says, but I think you are ignoring the globalists. No, not at all. No. Yes. So Raymond says, okay, well, I'll get your comments in a second. Give me a second, Raymond. And thank you everybody for being so enthusiastic. So Eva Longoria put out a video. Ugh. Actors and actresses make give me a headache. Eva Longoria did some Ice Are Nazis video apparently, or something like that. And so did Glenn Close, who I barely know who that is, to be entirely honest, but they're parroting the same thing. And I noticed something. Go back, and if you search for Eva Longoria Ice or Glenn Close Ice, you'll see their videos on X and on all sorts of social media feeds right now. Notice something. They're reading. They seem to be reading a PR statement. They're reading. These are actresses. These are like top tier actresses who are reading a prepared statement. Can you see the problem? Think about it. They are actresses. And yes, by the way, I'm taking back the word actresses, actors and actresses. Si como en español las palabras son masculinas y femeninas, estúpidos comunistas. This is the stupidest thing I ever heard. Actors. No, no, we don't have gender anymore. No, there's actors and actresses. Anyways, they're actresses reading PR statements. What do they do for a living? Isn't their job to remember lines very quickly and repeat them in character? Like, this is where their 10,000 hours goes, specifically to this skill. But yet they're reading something. They've put no effort into it. They're not memorizing something and putting passion. You can see their eyes moving back and forth on the screen. They're just lazily reading it. And I have a working theory. I think, could be wrong about this, but I think their PR agents are telling them it's good for their brand to read these statements. And they don't actually know what's happening on the ground. They have a very superficial understanding. They might see CNN, somebody killed by ICE, and that's all they know. They don't know anything else, none of the complexity. And remember, each of them, just like in the music industry, each of them are a massive corporation onto themselves, right? Part of studios, they have studios, agents, PR agencies, they're very complex bureaucracies themselves. They just happen to be the face of it. So yeah, that's right. Can you feel that? Can you see that? Let me articulate it how I think it is. Hollywood and Hollywood actresses and actors are just Dilbert cartoons. Think about it. You know, the Dilbert cartoon framing is really Hanlon's razor. Never attribute malice to those things that can be explained by stupidity. I think that's what's happening. You just have people that are so insulated from what's going on. You have PR agents who are often quite woke themselves, who are trying to sell them, oh, read this statement. It's going to be really good for your brand. You'll get lots of support. And then it blows up in their faces and they don't know why. And you've heard people make overtures to say, you know, most of Hollywood is not nearly as woke as people think they are when you have a conversation with them. And many people have said that. I think this is why. I think this is just the PR agents. Find out who prepares these statements and who the people are and for which PR firms they're working for. I'm willing to bet you're going to find foreign money. That's my guess. Anyways. So Raymond, you said, what do you think about the Canadian-US relationship? I don't know, man. I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of theater. I think Carney is trying to play the same theater game as well, with no leverage. Like, he doesn't really have any leverage. And maybe that's his way of negotiating. I do know from people who I trust, who are close with or tied into the administration here, and I know people in politics as well in Canada, it seems to be what everybody wants and they know is going to be best for Canada and American interests would be an economic zone like what the EU was supposed to be before it got politicized by all the communists. That it would be one massive economic zone that clearly China is not happy with and very scared about happening. And there would be no border. And the two countries would probably secure the Arctic together. And Canada, like, the Netherlands or Germany or Spain, would retain their sovereignty, but they would be part of one broader economic force. That's what they want to have in Canada and the US. The trick is selling it to some of the woke mob or the people who are brainwashed to hate America or hate Canada and ignore the fact that our cultures are so similar, as I mentioned on Scott's podcast, that we we all live within an hour of the border, that we really share so many common interests and, historical, our division in history. The Americans, the number one country that the Americans have invaded were Canada. The Americans have invaded Canada, I think, remember from school, 9 times, prior to the BNA Act and when it was still England and stuff like that, but or British North America. The that is a time long past, and we are so integrated with one another that it would be so much to our benefit. Canadians could work in America legally, and Americans could work and come expropriate and build out our natural resources in Canada and make us one economic force that turns China into a barfly. That's really what the effect would be. And that's why China is working so hard through propaganda measures to brainwash people in the West against Trump and against, amplifying Carney. And you see, even Carney has had to walk back his statements on and the deal with China, or at least some degree, because he knows we don't have the leverage against the largest economy in human history. So I think that's where we're going, and it's just a matter of selling it to the public. And the problem is politicians and lobbyists and whatever, they all suck on the infrastructure and system that we have. That's how they make their living. So they once they figure out how they all can make money together in one broader system, then you'll see how very quickly all of a sudden the problems would be solved. That's the big incentivizer. Um, uh, yeah. So Maureen says we used to do that. BJ, my dad worked as a pipeliner all over the U.S. We had green cards. Yeah, definitely. My father went to university in Minnesota, famous Minnesota. The same thing. It was things were not as rigid as we are today. And by the way, I think that might be, the progressives or the lefties sometimes go a little bit crazy. They forget too much of a good thing can be bad. I think that was the original motivation behind our open borders. It's not so much open borders, but an open economy where if you wanted to go work and live in another country, you can do that with little friction. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's actually a good thing. The problem is we've brought in garbage from the third world. Imam Tawhidi talks about this, that the Western world has brought in the garbage from the Middle East that they didn't want, that they kicked out, and have now integrated them into our politics, and they need to be purged. And maybe, a unified Pan America, Canada economic zone will be able to deal with that. Like, tabla rasa, like the progressives always say, we're going to make a tabla rasa on integration, and we're going to reevaluate people who've been naturalized in the U.S. and Canada over this period, and say, oh yeah, all these people are tied to money laundering by terrorist organizations. Yeah, maybe we're going to cancel your citizenship now, and maybe that's what we'll see. But that's how I see it. Jessica Rocky feels the same way. I do when I talk about Carney. You're all wonderful. So, okay, just to close things off, tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about intelligence agencies. We're going to address a thesis from somebody who's in law enforcement about why intel agencies or how they become woke. And you wouldn't be surprised. It's really a Dilbert cartoon. That's what's leading to it, and I think it can be fixed, but we'll see what happens. I think also the public friction you're seeing between Trump and Canada, as I said yesterday, it's necessary. This is just negotiating in public. This is the style of the Trump administration. If you have thick skin and things don't really bother you, it shouldn't bother you either. And if you have thin skin, get thicker skin. There's so many things to be worried about, right? Like, or should I say, there's so few things to be worried about in the world. And you see that Trump has some sort of deal on Greenland. They have Alaska and the lower 48. They're not going to allow this big landmass that's nothing but natural resources in the middle be taken over by China. They're just not going to allow that. That's it. That's pretty simple. And I think cooler heads in Canada will prevail, and I think they understand that. I think it's important. I think what's the most important thing for Canadians, this is for my American friends, much like you're all very patriotic about being American and that is part of your identity, it's the same thing for Canadians. And just because Canadians are patriotic about their Canadian identity doesn't mean they don't have love and respect for America. And we understand the importance of your Constitution because, during this time, freezing our bank accounts and stuff, we really learned the importance of your Constitution and wish we had something like that. But instead, we have a piece of toilet paper called the Charter of Freedoms and Rights Act, where the very first stage says this can be ignored at will if we want. But anyways, uh, Maureen, Maureen, I can't say that. Maureen's amazing. She grew up in Surrey, and yeah, Surrey's got a Khalistani problem. For people who don't know, Khalistani are Sikh terrorists. They blew up Air India, and it's basically based out of Canada. The Indian government has been crying about this terrorist network operating and growing in Canada for many, many years and have done nothing about it. So, because Canada is basically a hodgepodge, since they killed Canada during the trucker convoy, because 10 years of we're racist, colonial project, we have no cultural identity, we're a post-national state, and then they use this moment instead to revitalize Canada and revive it like we were hoping. They just destroyed the country for good. Canada is just a hodgepodge of organized crime to foreign terrorist organizations and communists just tearing the country apart. But I think America and the Trump administration in particular will help guide us to more prosperous pastures in the future. That's what I hope. And Raymond says, I love my country. And he also says, but I also love Canada. Well, thank you, brother. And we're the same way. I mean, this is the whole point I was trying to make during the many interviews I did during the protests, that when you get the media and government out of the way, we all got each other's backs. We're all North Americans. And by the way, I found the same thing in Mexico because I spent a lot of time in Mexico too. And people were nothing but just amazing people there. Like there's good people everywhere. It's just our garbage that goes into politics that are the ones that ruin things. But at the end of the day, they'll need to survive as well. And I think we're gonna find the 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 golden age that we all think we're on the horizon. That's on the horizon. I think we're gonna get there. I really do. I see a lot of positive developments in the future. So yeah, I don't know. Things are gonna be great, man. I'm not worried at all. Raymond, well, thank you for joining for the first time. Jesse, thank you for being here as always. I love you. Being willing to stream how to unbrainwash the crazy lefties. Yes, we'll talk about that. That's something that I've been not just anybody who just falls victim to any sort of echo chamber that's based on just emotional framing. They can be reached. They really can. It just takes time and it's a process. And those are the tools of persuasion that Scott and many others have talked about. And that's right, Raymond. Scott's golden age. I think is he the one who came up with it first or Trump? I think it might have been Scott, and that might have persuaded Trump over the future. Anyways, I got to run. It's already an hour and 15 minutes. You're all amazing. We'll be here tomorrow. We're going to talk about how intelligence agencies and law enforcement become woke over time. And it really is a Dilbert cartoon. It's hysterical, but I think we can fix it. All right. I love you all. I got to run, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Be good to people. And remember, find a stranger today and just be extra kind to them. I promise you, you'll make their day and you'll feel better about yourself. All right. We'll see you tomorrow and have a good night. Bye bye.